Right. Welcome to today's REDCap session. We're covering entering and exporting data. My name is Chris Sorensen. I am a WashU REDCap administrator, and today's February 7th, 2025, and we are on REDCap version 14.5.15. All right, so what we'll cover today, first part will be data entry. And we'll go over a couple of the tools that are helpful for this. And then we'll go over user rights related to data entry and data export. Um, we'll manually enter some data, which isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but I want to show a couple workflows for quality assurance, including field history, comment log, and also some of the legends that you see over here, just to go over this so you're all familiar with this, because this can really help you kind of understand where you're at with data collection, data entry, things like that. And then we're going to export data. And even though there's only two bullets here, this create a report, um, it has a lot of uh, flexibility. You have a lot of things you can do to create a report and then ultimately export data. And primarily, that is to export certain subsets of data. So if you only want people, data from people who are in a certain age range, a certain BMI range, that have a certain condition, you can filter by any of those or all of those together. All right, if you've watched the other presentations, you've seen my hypothetical workflow slide here, and today we'll kind of cover both ends of this. So first, we're going over the entry portion and some different ways to accomplish that. We'll also have a brief. We're going to import some data from one of the CSV files that are available for this session. And then we're going to export the data into a nice spreadsheet and then show you how you can export into some of these. I only have R on mine, so we'll export to on my computer, so we'll export to R, but you can export to SPSS, SAS, Stata, and an XML, which if you don't know what XML is, I'd say it's probably not worth worrying about. So we'll take some time going over the record status dashboard. If you are doing data entry, the record status dashboard is a very good friend of yours. It's where you can come and see all the records in your project. You can see what they have filled out and what they haven't, what data has been entered, what hasn't. This one, it's all green, which means these are all complete. But I probably should have picked a picture that has various colors in here, because that's really where you can start to see which records have all their data, some of their data, or none of their data. And then with reports, as I mentioned, this is a really powerful tool. Specifically, what I have here are these step 2 and step 3 when we go through the report, where you can choose a subset of fields that you want to export. For any of you who have experience, if you've exported data from a large project that has multiple events, maybe repeating instances, exporting all the data at once is almost unusable. So unless you have coding experience and can restructure it by writing some sort of code like in R or Python or something like that. So a lot of times just exporting the subset of data you need is much more important than exporting everything all at once. And so you can choose your fields. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you can filter by any of those fields, any field in the project. It doesn't even have to be one that you are exporting. You can filter by any field here. So if there was a field in my project that's I'm not choosing up here, I can still filter by it. If your project is longitudinal, you can also filter by event, and you can create some live filters on your report, which we'll go through all of that. Okay, and that is all the slides for today's session. So we're going to jump over, um, go ahead and navigate to redcap.woostel.edu. Um, put this on in the chat for those of you here if you're not already navigated to there. And then once you're logged in, you should come to the home page. Okay, once we're here, go ahead and create a new project. And we can call this, whoops, sorry. And we can call this project, we'll just call this entering and exporting data. And I'll give mine the date. I'm just giving mine the date because of I make this same project over and over. You don't have to give it a date if you don't want. And we're going to choose practice just for fun. And we're going to import or create an empty project blank slate. You can select create project and agree. Okay, so we have our basic project here with just one form by default. And what we're going to do is we're going to import two of the files that, two of the CSV files that are available to you. So go ahead, if you haven't already, try to find where you stored the two files. Specifically, we're looking at data and data dictionary. And if you don't have those, you can check the email that I sent earlier today, or if you're watching this, there'll be a link available to download those. So the first thing we're going to do is just import the data dictionary file. We're going to go over to dictionary. One thing here, if this is not in month, day, year format, do switch it to that. It can't be in day, month, year. Make sure it's in month, day, year. Okay, so go ahead and say choose file. And then we will go to the location where we had our files. You can see all my files for REDCap here. So we're going to take the data dictionary. Go ahead and open that. We got data dictionary.csv. Upload the file, and it should say it contains 20 fields, which replace one. If you're here, that's great. Don't navigate away because a common mistake is not to click commit changes. So if you see this, go ahead and click commit changes. If I then navigate to my designer, I can see I've got a demographics form and a generalized anxiety disorder scale. Okay. We're going to import the other file, and then I'll pause just to make sure everybody gets to this point. So we'll do data import tool this time. Over on the left, data import tool. Once again, the only thing that might need changed is this to the month, day, year format. Oops, got to upload or choose a file first. Go ahead and select choose file. And we'll say data this time. And we'll open. And you should come to here where you see document was uploaded successfully. And then you see a lot of kind of plain black text. These to indicate these are all new records that we're importing. We don't see any red. That's good because that means you're overwriting data. But we don't have any data in there yet. So we don't see any of the red. We do see some gray on this checkbox field which if you're wondering why we see that because gray text is existing data, it's because a 0 in this field means it's unchecked. So even though we don't have any data in that field, this is showing up as as it has data because unchecked means 0, and all the checkboxes are unchecked at this point. So we're going to scroll down. We're going to say import data. And it should say import successful, 12 records were updated or modified. There's no other button to push this time. And you can just navigate to record status dashboard and see if you've got something that looks like this. And I'll just pause for a minute to make sure everybody got the data dictionary and data uploaded. Sorry, let me try that with being unmuted. I did that yesterday for a while, talked on mute for a little bit. Okay, so we're at the record status dashboard, and you can see we've got some varying colors and shapes. So each one of these records essentially represents a person. This is all fake data, by the way. So each of these is a participant that's enrolled in my study, or it's a patient, or it's somebody applying for your your program, or whatever a record represents. Maybe maybe each record represents data from a sample of something that you've collected. So that's what each of these records represents. And each of these buttons is where you can click to just go in and look at a person's responses or the data for that particular field. Okay, pretty straightforward there. If I click over here where it says record ID RCT001, I actually go to this a little dashboard just for this individual record, which not a whole lot useful here. But if you have a project where you have a lot of data collection instruments and a lot of events, these individual record home pages become very useful. Now, if we go back here again, anything that's green means it's complete. Anything that's yellow means unverified, and anything that's red means incomplete. So how do these get this definition? Basically, by default, every instrument in REDCap, if you fill the data in from within REDCap, so meaning I'm logged into REDCap and I'm entering data into a form like this, not that I'm sending someone a survey and they're filling it out, but if I'm in here and I'm filling this out, by default, at the bottom of every instrument, there is a field called complete. And you can save it as complete, you can save it as incomplete, you can save it as unverified. So this was complete. If I change it to unverified, now I go back and so this one went to yellow instead of green. If I said incomplete, goes to red instead of yellow. And I can always change it back to complete. Okay. Let's navigate out to the dashboard again. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward for data entry when we're logged into REDCap. Let's now go to let's go to project setup first and enable surveys in the project. Then we'll go to online designer and we'll enable this as a survey. Just click enable and then save the changes. We won't go through the settings. If you need to learn about survey settings, you can watch the survey setup and distribution. I go through that pretty comprehensively there. So now we've got a survey. Okay, let's go back to our dashboard now. And we've got new icons here. We've got kind of a straight topped triangle. I don't remember my shapes very well. I know that has a parallelogram, maybe. That with a check mark, and it's kind of orange instead of in verified. And then when we have a completed survey response, we have a green check mark in the box. Okay, that becomes useful if some people may fill out as a form, some people fill out a survey, or you have some that are forms and some that are surveys. So for example here, let's go ahead and create a new record. And when we create a new record, which you'll see here, this is naming it record ID 1. Let's maybe, since we're doing data entry and we already have kind of a naming convention on these records, let's do another step before we actually go in and make anything on this record. Before I navigate away from this, one thing to say is if I create a new record and then I don't go in here and save anything, that record just goes away. So it's almost like opening a Word document, not saving it, and then closing it out. Like it's almost like it was never there. Okay, so when I navigate away from this, we're going to go to Project Setup. That record is no longer there at this point. We'll see that in a moment. Let's just go down to Enable Optional Modules and Customizations and click Disable on Auto Numbering. Okay, let's go back to the record status dashboard now. And as you can see, there's no record 1. There's no record 1 because I didn't save anything in that record. I just clicked create and it went away. Now look up here, you do have a create record up here on the record status dashboard. So you can create a record directly from in here. You also can do the add edit records. And again, now instead of just a button that says add new record, I have a text box because now instead of just getting an automatic number on my records, I can define my record ID. So let's say RCT013. And then if I just click out of this box, it should pull up a new record. Okay, now this is just a temporary record until I start saving things. So let's go in and check the demographics instrument here. And so now we have some data. Okay, let's go ahead and enter this. So in this scenario, and my background is research, so I often think of REDCap in terms of participants and study visits. If you are using REDCap for other reasons, as I mentioned earlier, people use it for applications to programs. People use it for lots of other things besides just research. So just because I'm using research terminology does not mean you can't use REDCap for other purposes. Okay, so let's say data visit. So in this scenario, maybe I have a participant in my lab and I'm just doing direct data entry where I'm asking them all these questions and I'm just entering it into here, almost like if you're at a doctor visit, they're standing at their computer entering data into Epic, except this time I'm doing it into REDCap. So I say, okay, the data visit is today. What's your date of birth? Oh, looks like there was a range on this field. Okay. Because of this, I forgot to update that to the date of this field. So let's just pretend we're hopping in a time machine and let's go back to 2024. We'll just say this visit happened February 7th, 2024. Okay, it likes that better. So just move it back to 2024 sometime. I think it was before November. And then date of birth. Let's say, okay, their date of birth, we'll say, is in the 90s, February 6th, one day after their birthday. Age was already calculated. What's your sex, racial origin? We'll just enter ethnicity. Height in inches, how tall are you? And then which of these medical conditions apply? We'll just say that. Maybe there's an other. Um, Also, one thing I need to update here is my sex and gender fields. I have an old one here on another video. I do have a more comprehensive sex and gender fields, and I have sexual orientation, gender identity, best practices for fields in the materials for the creating forms and surveys. I've got two things I need to update: this date range and my uh, need to add a gender identity field and expand on those a little bit. But anyway, what we're here for today um, is data entry. So a lot of time when you're doing direct data entry, especially if you're having people write it down on a piece of paper first and then you're entering it into REDCap, a lot of times you'll have two people do this just to make sure there's no errors. So a common workflow is to use the legend to let people know where you're at. So this is where unverified comes in. So let's say um, somebody else is going to come in here afterwards and just check and make sure this all makes sense. Or if I was entering it from a piece of paper, they're going to come in and just double check everything. So I'll say unverified and save. Okay. And let's go to record status dashboard. Okay, so we can start to see got a new patient, unverified data. Maybe someone will come back to that. Maybe a research assistant's coming in tomorrow and is going to review this data just to make sure there's no errors. And then we go to this one. And let's say we're going to send this as a survey. Now, when we're testing here, the easiest way to do this is just survey options, open survey. If you're actually delivering surveys to people, you would probably do that in a different way, which again, I have all those methods in a different video. Okay, so let's just fill this out. I'll just do some diagonal lines here. Doesn't have to be real. Just have it and submit. Close out of this window. Oh, and anytime you use the survey options to deliver this, it is best to leave this page without saving changes. You don't want to be on this field as a form while somebody is filling it out as a survey. It doesn't do any harm if I just stay on here, but if somebody filled this out as a survey and then I entered some data and saved it, it actually would wipe out the data from the survey. So it's best to just leave, get out of here, make sure you can see that they completed it, and then you can come back in and see their answers. Okay. Now thinking about my workflow here, maybe the next day, my partner who is also doing data entry and double checking comes in and they're like, okay, go to the record status dashboard. Hey, it looks like this one needs to be verified and completed. I'll just go through. This looks good. This looks good. This looks good. And after they check everything, they can just save to complete, and you then have a more complete record. Okay. Let's do another example here. Another record. This time we'll enter it from here, directly from the dashboard. We'll just say RCT 014. This time you have to click the create button. And now we've got RCT 014. Okay, let's say we're doing the same process. Maybe this time we are entering it. We had the person fill out a form because our population is not people who want to use computers. So let's get a data visit. Again, we've got to put it at 2024. Let's just say it's here. Say birthday. We'll go back. Maybe we'll go a little further back. Get a higher age. Okay. Go through and maybe at this point, you know, um, I'm entering data and I've got to leave for a meeting. So this is all I can do for today. It just happens in the day to day of data entry and studies and other things. So we just do save and exit. Okay, now we've got the incomplete. All right. So the next time somebody comes in, they know that they can just pick up here, grab that piece of paper, start entering some information like that. So then they could change it to unverified. And in that example, I described two different people entering data. So, one thing REDCap does is it basically tracks everything. And when you log in with your username, anything you do uh, gets tracked. And one of the ways it does is right here in the view data history bubble. So you can see this little H here beside it. You can see this comment log, but for right now, just go ahead and click the H by one of them, and you should see your username, a timestamp, and the actual data that I entered there. Now, for some reason, this on dates, it always shows it in the year, month, day format, even if I have in the month, day, year. When I look at kind of the raw logging, it's going to have it in that year, month, day. So this is the same date, just in a different form. Now it only gets saved. One thing you can see here is these are all going to be time stamped, I believe, at the same time, because it actually timestamps it for when I save the record. So this one's at 12/28/48, 12/28/48. Believe I had this one in. Yep, 12/28/48. Now let's look at the history here. There's data in the field, but it says no data exists. Again, that's because it doesn't get timestamped until I come down here and save. It doesn't matter which status I save it as, just as long as I save it, it will get timestamped. If I were to leave here without saving, let's just say I forget and I navigate to the next one, it's going to, oh, you didn't save. And then you have an opportunity to stay on the page or save changes and leave first. We'll just save changes and leave. Okay. So now we have our yellow over here on demographics. And then if we jump back over there, we can go down to these last ones and see that happened at 12/31. Let's go back to generalized anxiety disorder. Scale, let's open it as a survey again. Let's see what happens if I just do two of these and then I submit. Oh, it actually did go complete because none of those fields are set as required. So even though it's not actually completed, it shows as complete. So that kind of ruined what I was trying to show there. So instead, so let's go back and let's go to the designer. Let's just add one thing to one field here just to make it so I can submit a survey as incomplete. Let's go here, and I'm just going to click Edit Matrix, and where is my required? Oh, there it is. All right. So this one's now required. Let's just go create another record. Or actually, we'll go back to this record. And I'll just show one thing here. If I click here, when I'm testing, I can do this. And there may be some times when you could do this with real data. But basically, if you fill out a survey and it's not what it's supposed to do, if you have edit survey user rights, I can click this edit response. And I could actually go down here and delete data for this form. Be sure to keep this in mind. Again, this is perfectly fine to do when you're testing, but you probably need to have a good reason for it when you're collecting real data. And let me just eliminate the word probably from that last sentence. You do need to have a good reason for it if you are collecting real data. So let's go ahead and delete that. Should now have incomplete, or sorry, unverified uh, and nothing here. The gray just means no data has been saved at all. So we go back here. I open this. Well, let's just do one or two of these, and then I try to submit. Maybe my participant was in a hurry and they didn't see that they needed to provide a value for that, and they just closed this. Let's see what that looks like now. Okay, so now we've got a partially complete survey. So you can start to see, especially if you had a larger project where you had several instruments and events going off to the right here. If you had hundreds, and some people even have thousands of records, you could see where you'd come here. And if it was all the same color or it looked the same, it wouldn't really tell you much. You'd be able to navigate places, but it wouldn't really tell you much. Because of the color coding, you can come in here and get a pretty good idea of where you're at with data entry, and if the form, or excuse me, the instrument was submitted as a survey or a data entry form from within REDCap. And anytime uh, need it, it's right up here for you. Okay. I'm going to pause just for a moment to see if there's any questions. Okay. So one other thing to show on the data entry before we switch over to user rights is the field comment log. So I can come in here. Let's say I'm double checking this data. And maybe I say, this person entered, over half the days and nearly every day on some of these, and yet they're saying there's no difficulty at all for this. So maybe I just want to have a conversation with the person who entered this data. Let's say that wasn't me, and I want to just confirm, like, are you sure they entered no difficulty? Because their score maybe indicates that they would have at least some difficulty. So what I can do here is I can enter a comment. That might be something like value for this field seems inconsistent with above ratings. I am not an expert in the in this survey. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not an expert in this specific anxiety survey. So I have no idea if this is true, but I just want to add one here. Oftentimes the comments are going to be questions that have open-ended open-ended answers, or when people don't quite give you a direct answer. So a common one that I've run into is if you're having somebody fill out their smoking history on a paper form, and then you're trying to enter that into REDCap, because when you ask somebody direct questions about smoking history, a lot of them don't give you just a straight, simple answer. They might say, I smoke socially from this age to this age, then I quit, and then I started back up at this age, and then I didn't do it from this range to this range. So when you ask them, like, when did you start, how many packs per day, they tell you a story rather than that. So that might be a time where you have to enter a comment and just describe how you determined what you are entering for those fields. Um, and you can actually take this up a notch here instead of just having the comment log. You can go to project setup, scroll down, and this cell looks a little different for you, but you can click additional customizations. And we can change from a field comment log to a data resolution workflow. I can save that. Nice thing is after you save it, you'll get a more, there is a more comprehensive video to watch there to go over this, but I'll just go over it kind of quickly. If I go back to my records, I open one of these. Now let's click here. Okay, so it looks different. Um, and you can say open a query. Um, and this is from me. And you can select another user who's supposed to see this. Now, because I'm the only person on this project, there's no other users here. But if I added somebody else to this project, you would be able to see that. And then I can say email them. And so if I open that query and I had selected a user, it's going to email them. And then it's going to give them this little notification here. You can see there's an open data resolution workflow. Person can come in so they can see, okay, this was the original value. Then they send it back to me to ask this. And, maybe then me and the other study team member have a conversation. Uh, and so then you can put a comment here and you can close the query or you can reply. And when you reply, you could say verified, confirmed, determined, something like that. Respond to query. Now, that might have been a time where I actually closed it, but just to show you that respond, you can come back and you can say close query. They verified it. Add a comment there if you want, but maybe you're just, oh, it is. Never mind. Let me take that back. Or add a comment no matter what. Thank you. Something just as simple as that. Close the query. All right. So that's a pretty powerful documentation tool there. When you're thinking about, especially if you've worked on long projects, you know that for as simple as data entry sounds, there's always things that come up like that, always. So this is really powerful. The comment log is good too, but this one adds a little more substance and a little more timestamps and who responded back. And just imagine that every other one of these is not from me, it's from another study team member. But for today's sake, we can only use the person on the REDCap project. It's out of here. Okay, we've gone through several items related to entering data, and we're going to go over how to export that data soon. But you often have several people on a project. Some people have all the user rights so they can do anything and see anything in the project. Some people, you may only need to come in and view the data. Like maybe you've got a physician who you don't want them to change any data, but they need to review it. Or you've got people who are entering data, but you don't want them to export data, or you only want them to be able to export data that is not identifiers. So let's go through how to set that up. Basically, go to user rights, and we can add new users. I think I have a fake one in here. REDCap help desk will add REDCap help desk to my project. Say add with custom rights. Okay, so here's the highest level privileges you can have in a project. And maybe if this person is only entering data, they don't need any of this. Maybe all they need to be able to do is create records. You can also have them be able to rename records or delete records. One thing to note is that you can rename and delete records all the time in development mode. But consider whether you want to do this in production. And then over here, you have privileges for viewing and data export. So on an instrument by instrument level, you can decide what people can see and what people can export, and if they can edit what they see. So right now, the default is this person has everything, but maybe I just want them to only be able to read only on this. And I don't want them to be able to edit survey responses, because editing survey responses is necessary sometimes, but you have to think about whether you want a study team member to be able to edit survey responses. A common time when this is needed is when you're doing an e-consent and a study team member needs to come in and sign after the person submits the survey. So then they need to be able to edit those responses just so they can add their signature. But we'll leave this off for right now, and then we can choose how they uh, what they can export. So maybe they can export everything, maybe they can export nothing, maybe they can only export de-identifiers or de-identified data, which this asterisk means if you choose this, it's not going to let them export certain kind of fields. If you choose this one, it's going to not let them export fields that you have identified as PHI or as identifiers, which on this, there's not really any identifiers, but on this, on the demographics, there's identifiers. So maybe they can only export de-identified data. And at that point, you can add a user. And now this user can only do the things that I've given them the rights to do. So let me just go back here. If you ever need to edit somebody's privileges, you can come in here, click this and open. Let's see. So this was read only on generalized anxiety scale, and this person's de-identified here. So I'm going to do something here that you won't be able to follow along with, but just to give you an idea of this, I can actually, it's not going to let me select the other user. I can usually give myself the rights of another user on the project, but it's not going to let me choose the help desk one. But anyway, basically you can imagine that if I was somebody who only had read only for this generalized anxiety scale, when I came into it, even if it was blank and had no data, it would basically look like this. Like even if this had no data, if I only had read only rights here, it would I would not be able to check anything on here just like this. Okay. Maybe not the best example since I can't show you exactly. Oh, there it is. Okay, now I can. Let's do this again. Okay, I'm now using this. Again, you won't be able to follow this. I can only do this because I'm an admin. Let me just add another. Oh, sorry. Let me add 15. Now go into here. I can't enter any data in here. Oops. Because I am using this user rights, which only has read-only privileges. Okay. So if you want somebody to only be able to see the data, but not change the data, you can do that. And then when we get to the data exporting, you can see that there's ways to restrict what somebody can export. All right, I want to pause a moment for questions. also going to pause the recording right now. Okay, so the question is, can you disable auto numbering after a project has been put into production status? The answer is you cannot, but myself and the other admins can. So basically, if you're in that situation, just submit a ticket. If you click um, contact REDCap administrator, just pulls that up directly. It even fills in some of your information for you, and you can just tell me, uh, you know, it actually gives me the project ID. So basically, you just need to tell me that you want auto numbering disabled. I usually get to those ones pretty quickly. I will say if you've got a ticket in this week with my 2 days off, running a little bit behind. So I usually get those done pretty quickly, but you can submit those tickets to us to let us know that you want it disabled. Basically, what you'll see, go back to viewing as myself, what you will be able to see here uh, when this is in production, this will just be grayed out. I think it might say that over here. Nope, it doesn't say anything about needing to reach out to us if in production mode, but yeah, we can do that for you for sure. Okay, let's go back to the record status dashboard. And before we begin exporting data, I just want to do one thing here. Um, we added this record 13 and 14. Let's just delete those. And to delete a record, you click, go to the record homepage, and then come here and delete. If you don't see this delete, I'll go ahead and delete this. But if you don't see that, you can actually go in, since you created this project that you're working on, you can go in and you can change your own user privileges and make it so you can rename or delete records. So if you don't see that, just go to user rights, click on your own username, edit user privileges, and make sure you can delete those. And then just go to record status dashboard, click on the record ID, drop down menu, delete. All right, so now we have our original data set that we had. And we will move to exporting some data. Okay, so to export data, it's over here in data exports, reports, and stats. And when you come here, you have a couple of options. First, you can export everything by clicking view report. Now this looks pretty good. It's a small study with only 2 instruments. But as I mentioned, if you have several events, repeating instruments, and lots of records, running this report to see everything all at once can be almost pointless at times because if you've seen this before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you have more events or more, if you have repeating instruments, you actually have one line per event and per repeating instrument. So record one might have 10 rows if they had multiple events. And then the data is not stacked all nicely like this. It kind of cascades down based on what forms are filled out at each event. And so you get this kind of what I very scientifically described as a Swiss cheese report, where you have data here, and then there's like blanks on this row until here, and things like that. And we'll go over that in the longitudinal projects session. But this one looks pretty simple. So I could just go ahead, looks good, looks useful, and I can just export this. For now, let's just go ahead and export the raw data to a CSV file. Won't worry about this. Come in here and export the data. Download. Can open. Here we have our nice organized spreadsheet. You can just widen some of these dates if you want to see those. One thing to notice here, this one we can get rid of this field since we didn't have a survey identifier. But the column names are the variable names here, and you can tell that because they're all lowercase. They don't have spaces, and they have underscores instead of spaces. And the raw data is really useful when you're doing data analyses and data visualizations. If you're sending this data to your biostatistician or your data analyst, whoever's going to have their hands on this next, most likely they want the raw data. Let's look at a couple of these more closely. So these are multiple choice fields. And then these that have the mental health and then multiple underscores followed by a letter. All of these columns, these mental health, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these all represent the one checkbox field. Okay, so why does a checkbox get 5 columns and these other multiple choice fields only get 1 column? So the reason is because multiple choice fields allow you to select more than one answer. So you can't really put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all in one cell if you're doing data analyses or data visualization. Actually, I will show you in a minute. You can put them all in one row, but by default, the checkboxes come out where they have 1 row per choice, and then 0 means non-checked or unchecked, and 1 means checked. So this person checked option 2. This one did option 1, 2, 3. And then here you can see on the folks that checked 5, there's branching logic because the option for 5 is other. And if someone clicks this, then they have the opportunity to write what they want in here. So you'll see anybody who has a 0 doesn't have a value here, but anybody who has a 1 does. Okay. And then here you can see the field, the default field for the instrument saying whether it's complete. These are all 2s because that means complete. Let's go to our generalized anxiety scale where that one is saying complete. And just so you can see here, the complete is at the end of this, but at the beginning, it's just the name of the instrument. So here you can see these ones are complete. These ones are unverified. And these ones are incomplete. And you can see here that they're incomplete because there's no data entered here. And some of the fields that are just text or, or dates, they're pretty easy to determine. These are just whole numbers, not much to go over there. Let's go ahead. Actually, we'll leave this open, just minimize it if you didn't already close it. If you did, you can just open it again or re-download it here. But let's export the data again. This time, let's use labels. Let's export the data. This time it has labels. Notice it says labels up here. Also has a timestamp of when it was downloaded. Okay, so it looks different. A lot more information in here. You can see there's spaces and capital letters. Instead of numbers under racial origin and ethnicity, you've got the actual value. So sometimes seeing this is much easier than just seeing the numbers. Again, oftentimes uh, your analyst or uh, your biostatistician will probably want the numbers instead of the everything written out. Um, but for you, or depending on what you're trying to do with the data, it may be better to have the the actual um, the labels. Because here now you can see what choice one was, and then you can see checked or unchecked, which I don't like the checked unchecked, but it does show you what it is. To me, the checked unchecked is not like super easy to see. I mean, you can see. I mean, you can see it, but here, on racial origin, it's pretty easy to kind of look and get a breakdown, just kind of a quick mental breakdown of how many people are in each race. But here this just isn't. My mind just doesn't see the checked versus unchecked quite as clearly. And then over here again on our anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder scale, we've got the actual value written out. Okay, so I've got this open, and then just to compare and contrast with our other, you have all numbers here, and then you have ones and zeros here. Questions on the CSV exports of the raw and labels? Okay. So that was when we just exported everything. We said, just give me all the data. Now let's go do some data subsets. Let's close here. And what we can do here is create a new report. And let's say, actually, before we do that, let's do one other thing. Let's go to My Reports and Exports. And this is the same page as if you click record, or sorry, not record status dashboard, but data exports, reports, and stats. So that's My Reports and Exports. Another thing you can do just pretty quickly is just choose a single instrument. So if you only wanted to export the GAD, you could do that pretty quickly. Right? So we don't need to necessarily go through that. It'll look the same, except as you can see, there's no, the first instrument is not here. Okay. All right. So now let's create a report. And this is when we can just pull out whatever data we want. We don't need to take everything. We just are analyzing or making a very specific graph or of one, uh, certain aspects of the data. So let's give the report a name. I'm going to call mine data subset. Oftentimes you'll do something that, makes more sense, maybe like basic participant information or something like that. Maybe I will just leave mine as that. You won't have this option to set as public, but I do. But you do have this description, and you can just put something in here to let other people know um, what this is. Something like that. You can choose who can see this. By default, it says all users, but maybe I only want me to see this one. I don't want other people. You can do that, but I'll just say all users can view, and then you can choose which can edit. Maybe we'll just say only I can edit. Okay, then we can choose which fields we want. And there's three different ways we can choose the fields we want to export. The one way is just to come in and start typing in. So maybe we say age, and as I start typing in, it populates. Another thing I can do is check here. It turns to a drop-down menu. So maybe I want date of birth. Another thing you probably just saw there is that I don't have to go in the order that they are in the in the actual project. I can put these in any order I want, and I can actually move them around. Don't even necessarily need to have record ID first, although 99% of the time I do have record ID first. Actually, you don't even need to have record ID, but then, uh, most reports aren't terribly useful without a record ID, but you can do that. You can also pick a whole instrument, which don't do that yet, but don't do that, but just to show you you can. Um, you could pick every field from an instrument. And probably my favorite way is the quick add. You can just open here. You can see all these fields. And if I move this over a little bit, kind of watch how this populates. If I just say I want this, 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 and maybe we'll do basically take everything but data visit and demographics from this one. And maybe we'll just leave all of this one off because none of this will come to table one. If I exported too much, or if I selected too many, I can delete these. I can easily add it back if I need to. And now I have the fields that I want to export. Now there's some additional report options here. So for example, you can include the survey identifier field and the timestamps field. Now you'll notice when we did our first two reports where we just exported everything and we chose an instrument, those were automatically included. But if I'm doing a data subset, these fields are not included in my export. I can include them by checking this, but I won't for now. Here, let's combine the checkbox options into a single column. And a note here again, just related to saying that these will be imported as a single text field when you do this. So again, you have to determine if that's useful for somebody doing data analysis, but maybe for this purpose of creating table one, I want those combined in one. And then here, this is usually if you have notes fields or open-ended questions where people can write a lot of stuff, you can decide whether you want carriage returns or you want it just all in one line on the cell. I don't know that I have enough. Actually, let's remove them and just see what that does. Couple options of how it's going to look here. We'll just leave both of these on both. Okay, now kind of the star of the show here for data exporting is step 3. Now, before we do that, let's just save this report, view report, and you can see we've got these fields for each participant. Okay, so maybe this is what we need for our table one, or just you'd obviously like average these or something. You wouldn't just write out somebody's information in a table one in a manuscript, but this is what I need to set that up most easily. You can see here now all the choices are in one column. Anybody who didn't check any has blank. But you can see those are all there. Looks like somebody did an other and then didn't fill something out. My my fake data sets and fake instruments need some updating. Um, okay, so this is everybody exporting these fields. Now let's go back to edit report. And again, now we go to our filter. And if you're in a big project, the filters are so powerful. Um, you can really narrow down. I mean, I use these for I use these reports for troubleshooting all the time. Sometimes I'll export just a single record or a subset of records and one field just to look at the data if I need to figure out something that went wrong in a project. So um, let's go ahead and try this out. Let's do something relatively simple first here. Let's say we only want people with a certain BMI. Let's say we want people who have a BMI greater than 25. All right, let's take a look now. And we only have two. All right, go back and edit again. Now maybe we actually let's just do, maybe now we're going less than, well, let's do less than 18, but let's do a less than or equal to. So we want anybody who's an 18 or below on the BMI scale. Right? One person. Now, what if we want both of those? We've already got our less than 18 here. Now we have a Boolean operator here, which you're not familiar with that. It's mainly just an and or. There's, probably some other, but basically here I can say and BMI greater than 25. Now, this actually doesn't make sense. You can't be less than 18 and greater than 25, so I can change this to an or. So we're going to get people who are either one of these two categories. Okay, then we've got our three people together. Now maybe we want the opposite of that. Maybe we want the people in between, so we can change this to a greater than equal to. Now in this one, we will want to do the and because we can go in between two numbers. We'll say less than, wait, I think I did this wrong. Let's change this to 19. Change this to 26. So now we're going to get 19 to 25. Actually up to 25.9, depending on scale. So now we basically have everybody who was not in the last one. So we have all the people who are within the 19 to 25 BMI range. Again, anytime we want, we can export those reports, those subsets. Okay. Now I mentioned what if I only want to select certain records? Can do that as well. Maybe there are a couple outlier fields and I only want to and I want to eliminate those fields. So I'm going to say record ID is not equal to 004 and record ID not equal to 1, 2. Now this is an and. This is one that I always have to think through a little bit more. So basically, all of the record IDs are not going to be equal to both of those. So we need to change it to an or. Pretty sure. Let's see. If I have it wrong, it's no problem. We come back and just change it. Okay, forget my last explanation. I don't know why I always get this one wrong. It's like for the first 25 years of my life, I always had to think through the greater than less than carefully. But for this one, for some reason, so it is an and. So it's not equal to this, and it's not equal to this. So it's the other way where if it was an or, it was saying it couldn't be this equal to this one or that one, and that would include everyone. So let's try this again. Okay, so now we've got no number 4, and we've got no number 12. As you can imagine, we can kind of reverse this and say equal to. And now this time we'll say or and equal to. All right, so maybe now I just got the 2. Okay. Let's change this back to maybe let's just use age. We'll say just greater than 30 and age less than 60. And I'll change this to an and. And I just want to show you here that you can also use advanced logic. So there are some things that you cannot do or do well with these filters. They are with the drop-down filters, I should say. They are very powerful, but there's certain things you can't do. So you can click here and say use advanced logic. It's going to show you what this looks like written out just as logic and you know and people sometimes ask what like language this is in. It's actually it's kind of like a pseudo SQL type of setup here when people ask about the logic within REDCap. It doesn't like quite equal any specific language correct exactly. But then one thing to note here is that you cannot convert these back to the regular. You can go from drop-down menus to advanced, but you can't go from advanced to drop-down menus. So if I convert this, I can't go back, but I can go in and add, any type of logic here. So if you are someone who is inclined to write logic, you can even take this to the next level, but this goes a little bit outside the reach of today's session. So let's just move away from that. And actually, let's just delete this so that our logic, oh wait, actually, well, if I tried to switch back, it would just tell me I can't. But now that it's blank, I can switch back to simple logic. Okay. Final 2 things to show in the time we have left are the live filters and sorting. So we're going to go ahead and export everybody. We won't put this filter on, but let's see what a live filter is. There's not text fields included here. It has to be multiple choice or the record ID as well. Let's go ahead and add those. Save the report. View report. Okay, so we have the report we had earlier. And we can also filter it right in real time. Okay, so if you know you're going to often want to export, female, male, export just individual racial origin or individual ethnicity, you can add these live filters in. Export one, then you could come back, switch, export the other, or you can just view these. You can view how these change um, if I look at the various categories I have here. I can set it back to nothing, but I can do that for all of these categories. Okay, so that's pretty cool for visualization or just making sure that, or if you know you're going to export uh, you know, all one category as one export and all another category as another export. Final item here is how you can sort the fields. Now you can sort on the other on the report. You can just click a column name and you can sort by that column. But here you can do kind of a multi-layered support or a multi-layered sorting. So I could say sort by record first, then sort by sex. Actually, I did that one wrong too. Let's try this a different way. Instead of sorting by record ID, let's sort by sex first, racial origin second. Okay, that looks better. So first, we're sorting female and male. So all the female participants come first, male second, and then we're sorting by racial origin next. So you can see these go in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the female category, and then go in all order here. I guess for um, my males in this group, I only have 2 racial origins, but they do go in order here. So again, I could just click here and all of these could be, we could sort by that. We could sort by height. We could go back to sorting by record ID, force that order. If I'm in here, there's not really a way to do that multi-layered one. So if I go back to sorting by sex, and again, I mentioned earlier that this is out of date. I do have a best practices for creating these types of fields, or for sex and gender, in the creating forms and surveys materials. But if I'm doing that just here, you can see I've still got female at first and male second, but then this column's not in order. So the only way you can do the multi-layered is through here. Maybe we could do, we'll do race and then age. So then you can see within each category of race that has more than one, they are sorted from an ascending order of age. And just quickly here, before I switch to questions, I'll click Edit Report. Oh, sorry, I was going to actually export that. Let's go View Report, Export. And if I export to our statistical package, basically I get two different files here, and you get and basically these need to be in the uh, same location, but we'll see if my R will hasn't been opened in a while, so it might be kind of slow. But we'll see what happens there. There we go. Oh, okay, so actually, I guess I changed it so it opened in Visual Basic, but this is an R script. Um, and what you can see here is it gives you some kind of baseline here that you can start working on if you're going to analyze this data in R. Okay. If I do SPSS, I've got 3 fields. We've got some instructions here that these all need to be in the same, and that this pathway mapper is actually only for Macs, or sorry, said that backwards again, is only for Windows machines, and then it has additional information for non-Windows users down here of how to set this up. But again, you would download these 3. I don't have SPSS on my computer. But basically, after you run the pathway mapper, if you're on a Windows machine like I am, you can open the SPSS file, and you don't even have to open the data. You just click run on the SPSS file, and it creates the SPSS file for you with all the labels and field types and all that already defined for you. So much better to do this way than just export to a CSV and then import it into SPSS or R or anything, because you get kind of a baseline REDCap kind of sets some stuff up for you that you wouldn't have to do on your own. All right. We have a little less than 2 minutes. And that is all the information that I wanted to cover today.